Welcome to the Naked Party Time podcast, where we get real and raw about life, leadership, and love.
While having lots of fun along the way.
So what do you say? Are you ready to get naked?
Let's do it.
Failing to plan is planning to fail. That's what Benjamin Franklin said, and sadly, I think it's how many people approach life, and specifically how they approach each new year. We just simply fail to plan. And having a plan is what we want to talk about today as we start a two-part podcast called Are You Ready for 2021? Well, welcome once again to the Naked Party Time podcast. I am your host, Jeff Manis, and here with me is the woman of knowledge herself, Sabrina. You like that name, the woman of knowledge?
No.
Don't like that one?
No.
You don't think you're a woman of knowledge? On certain
of some things, yes.
Yeah. Okay. What about on this thing?
On this thing? Yeah, I do have some
See?
knowledge.
Woman of knowledge. I struggle with nicknames for Sabrina. I like having nicknames for people, and I do call her something that you hate.
Yes.
What is it that I call you? I've been doing it for a long time.
I don't want to say it because it makes me cringe. So I'm sorry if this offends you because this is your nickname. But I do not care for the nickname Baby Doll.
And I don't really want to call you Baby Doll. I just do because it bugs you.
Yes.
And so I do. My new one, though, I have a new nickname for you, and you like the new nickname.
Yes, and I do like it.
Every Sabbath, I try and make Sabrina and I a big breakfast, bring it to her in bed. And a couple months ago, I brought her some eggs and sausage and toast, which is what I usually make. I then did a little like a curtsy at the side of the bed. And I said, "Your breakfast, my queen."
Yes, and I received that very well.
You don't mind that one?
No, I could be your queen and you can serve me.
So Queen Sabrina,
yes.
Welcome to the podcast once again.
Thanks for having me.
Whether you're joining us on your favorite podcast app or watching us out there on YouTube, hello to everyone there. We're so honored that you have chosen to use some of your time to be with us. We do hope this conversation today will help you take one more step in your life, your leadership, or your love, which is what we are real and raw about here. Hence the name, the Naked Party Time podcast. I almost had you say that, but I didn't think you'd get it because you weren't ready. I didn't put that in the notes for you.
No, my lips
I can
started
see on your
moving.
face. You were like, "Oh, he's asking me a question." Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I didn't set you up well for that one.
That's okay.
This is episode number 12.
That's
and
amazing.
It is amazing. And we're asking the question, are you ready for 2021? So Sabrina, are you ready for 2021?
I do not know.
Depends,
Parts of
right?
it, yes. Parts of it make me a little nervous, and I don't want to worry about things I can't control, but I am a little nervous for the aftermath of 2020 and what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the end of
No.
the hard times yet with COVID.
No.
But with that said, I'm sure all of us are ready to put 2020 in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
I think we're ready to move on, but that's not what we're talking about. Today, we're talking about being intentional as we go into a new year with a plan of how you're going to make progress in some specific areas of your life. Because remember, the goal is what, Sabrina?
Progress, not perfection.
You say that all the time. I love it. Progress, not perfection. I think people make mistakes when they set New Year's resolutions or goals, and then, the first time they don't do well at it, they just kind of throw it out the window. It's not perfection. It's making progress. This is the third year in a row that Sabrina and I have done what we're talking about on this podcast. And you can follow the same system, whether you're married or not. Some of what we talk about will come through our marriage lens, but for our single listeners out there, this is for you as well.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing for yourself. In fact, I do a similar practice for myself outside of what we do in our marriage, using and reviewing a life plan. And I'm planning on doing at least one whole episode on creating and then maintaining a life plan. I'll do that in the new year. And here's the thing. If you aren't intentional about where you're going in life, then you'll just end up wherever life takes you.
Wow.
Let me say that again because that was really good.
Yes, it was.
If you aren't intentional about where you're going in life, then you'll just end up wherever life takes you. I think that kind of describes how we lived a lot of our life, don't you think?
Yeah. I've always been a planner. Jonah is a planner. And so we have lived pretty structured lives. It's always been structured for our kids and calendars, but not, what's the word I'm looking for? Like,
It wasn't strategic.
yeah, there you go. It wasn't
Yeah.
strategic. It was the
Yeah,
planning we needed to do day in, day out. What do we need to save for? But, not like futuristic.
Yep. Long-term planning, thinking about how the next year affects the next 10 years, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is what I think we're doing now.
Is that one of your strengths, futuristic?
I have no idea. I've never done Strength Finder.
Oh, okay. I've done the strengths finder with Gallup, and futuristic is not one of my strengths. But it's good to, once you know your strengths, it's good to have people around you. So we have to kind of, or at least I have to work harder on futuristic planning.
What was that? We're getting a little bit off track here, but the one-word vision statement thing. The one.
Oh, that was it was a
called?
2-word purpose statement.
Yes. That mine was
Creating vision.
something like that, or leading with. It was something like that.
Yeah. Mine's nurturing belief, which belief is my number one strength.
Yeah.
So I believe in you more than you will ever believe in yourself.
Yeah. But mine was vision related.
Yeah.
Futuristic.
Which you are a vision guy. So futuristic may be one of your strengths.
Yep.
And you are good at looking ahead. And that's why, like, doing your life plan, you'll talk about that in that podcast. That will be really good.
Yeah. But I had never, up until a couple of years ago, even though I feel like I've always been somewhat of a visionary for ministry, I wasn't that way for my own life. Mm-hmm. And now doing this, I feel like now we're actually putting some vision to our marriage, our family, what we want to do.
I think depending on the ages, if you have kids, depending on their ages and the season you're in, it's hard to look ahead 5 years because tomorrow is all you could look ahead. I remember I'd put Jonah to bed even at like 2 years old, and he'd be like, "What are we doing tomorrow?" And I'm like, "I don't know, bud. Can we let's get to breakfast, and then after breakfast, we'll figure out what we're doing next." And so as a parent, you have to make so many daily decisions then to think what it'll look like in 5 years. It's hard, but now we're at the point where our youngest has 4 years left of school, and we can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel of raising our own children and what the next few years looks like. So it gets easier. So if you're in the thick of it with toddlers, hang in there and do your best. And you'll get there where you'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. And raising kids, it's not forever.
Yeah.
It's a short season.
Yeah. I just looked up my 2 words, living vision.
Living vision. Okay.
So the statement was, I will exist to serve by living vision.
Yeah.
We maybe should put that that was helpful for us to do that. I didn't think, but tell us right now, but maybe we put that in the show notes, link to that.
Do you have a true statement with that?
I will exist to serve by living vision.
I have a true statement with nurturing belief too that I say.
Yep. So anyway, sometimes we're talking about planning here and having vision for your life. Now, sometimes no matter how good you plan, life is going to take you on a certain course and you just can't stop it.
Yeah.
So take 2020, for example. No one but God saw the pandemic coming.
Yeah.
And when it came, like, we were all swept away with it, whether we wanted to be or not. Like there was things that affected our life that we didn't have control over, at least for a while and in some specific ways. Many plans were put on hold in 2020, but not all of our plans were.
Right.
For us and for many others, I think because we had put some intentional thought into planning out our year, we were actually able to still accomplish many of our goals, our hopes, and even some dreams in the midst of the pandemic. Heck, we started this podcast in the middle of the pandemic, which wasn't a part of our plan. The obstacle actually created a new opportunity for us to do this. One of the things I've been trying to drill into myself and into our team at Element is the fact that every obstacle is an open door to a new opportunity.
That's good.
So the obstacle of the pandemic opened up some other opportunities. Even some of our trips we took were kind of forced by the pandemic because we couldn't do things we had planned. So we don't always see obstacles that way, but obstacles are opportunities to advance if you see it the right way. And I believe that being intentional about having a plan for your life sets you up to better see the opportunities in life. So here's how Sabrina and I put together an intentional plan for every new year. I hope this encourages you to do something similar in your life if you don't already. If you're doing nothing, this might seem a little bit overwhelming. That's why we're breaking it up into 2 podcasts. This is only part 1 of the podcast. And don't feel like you have to start off right where we are. Just start somewhere. I can't say that enough. I've been saying it for everything. Like, start somewhere. Maybe it will confirm something you're already doing or give you some new ideas for what you can do. Or if you want, you can choose to just let life happen instead of you happening to life. I hope you don't do that, but that's a choice that we all have to make.
Yeah.
We can either let life happen or we can choose to happen to life. And that's what I'd rather do. For the married people out there, I think this is so, so important for you to do together. You have to do this together. If you don't take time to make a plan together, then it's going to be even harder than it already is to stay united in the same direction throughout the year. So if you don't set some common goals and plans together, you're each going to pursue whatever you think is best. And that can lead to division because you'll pursue things you want to pursue or that you think we're supposed to pursue.
Yeah.
And I'll pursue things that I think we're supposed to pursue. And we can end up going in two different directions.
And to me, I'm just like, that opens the door
Yep.
for the enemy to come right in
Absolutely.
and get between you guys.
Yep. So doing this annual planning session, whatever you want to call it, is a great way to keep your marriage united if
Yeah.
you're married out there. Again, for single people, you can still do this. I think
Yeah.
everyone should do a
I
version
was
of
thinking
this.
earlier, I'm like, if you're single, grab a friend.
Yeah.
I'll sit down with
Yeah.
you and
Yeah.
help you and
Yep.
brainstorm. And like, you don't have to do it on your own unless you want to. But I just feel like I hope we say this a lot too. I hope there's a friend in your life
Yeah.
that you can rely on to help you walk through
Yep.
this.
So initially, all of my steps started with R, except for one.
Surprise, surprise.
Drove me crazy. So I thought I was going to go with a different letter, but I figured it out.
Oh my goodness.
So here we go. Step number 1 was the one that didn't have an R initially, but we got one now. Step number 1 is this: schedule a rendezvous. Rendezvous is the R word.
What was the other word?
I was going to go with schedule it.
Oh,
Because here's what I'm talking about. Schedule a rendezvous. Literally schedule the time where you're going to do this.
yeah.
Put it on the calendar.
Yes. Make it a priority.
Make it a priority.
Yeah.
For married couples, we do recommend when you do this, when you set your time to plan the next year, we recommend getting away for an entire day, preferably getting away overnight somewhere to do this. At the very, very least, we do recommend scheduling about 3, maybe to 5 hours together, and you can couple that with a date night to make it easier.
Yeah.
So we did that last year. We coupled it with a date night, which, by the way, married couples, if you don't currently have a regular date night with your spouse, we just gave you goal number 1
Yes.
for the new year. So pause this episode and write that down. DATENIGHT. Date night.
Yes.
Write it down.
Please.
Make it a priority.
Never stop dating your spouse.
This is how we did our planning session last year. It was on a date night. We turned our date night into a 3.5-hour planning session at Panera Bread. Remember doing that?
Yeah, we closed the place
We
down.
did. We went to Panera. We had dinner. Then I grabbed my computer from my backpack that we brought, and we literally spent in that booth about 3.5 hours doing exactly what we're walking you through in this podcast and in the next one. This year, I'm super excited because we're actually going away overnight to Denver.
Woohoo!
Yeah, and we're staying at the Gaylord Rockies Resort and Hotel, which is right by the airport there. It's a massive, beautiful convention center. And we're making our getaway into our dream and planning session. We're going to have fun. We're going to go out to eat. We're going to go see Christmas lights, but we're going to set aside 3 to 5 hours to do what we're talking about here. And we're actually on this trip checking off one of our annual goals for 2020, which I'll talk about, I think, later. Maybe it's in the next podcast we're talking about that. So whatever you do, schedule the rendezvous. That rhymed.
It did rhyme. Good job.
So Sabrina, say that again.
Whatever you do, schedule the rendezvous.
I like how you say it. Even if you're single, again, you need to do this.
Yes.
Schedule the rendezvous. Schedule the time where you're going to get alone by yourself or with a friend or whatever, a group of friends, and plan out your year. I do this for myself as well to plan out my year individually. I review my life plan. I set personal goals that are aligned with our marriage goals. If you are married, I would encourage you to set your marriage goals and plan first
Yeah.
And then set your individual goals and plans so that you make sure those align with your marriage goals.
Yeah.
Again, if you're married, that's priority. So you do that one first and then do your personal ones. And this is actually where I think many people already fail. We say things like, well, man, we're just way too busy to schedule that much time to do that. And I would push back and I would say you might be too busy because you don't do it.
Yeah.
When you do it, you actually are prioritizing then your time for the rest of the year, and you make time to do this. So when you don't make a plan for your life, then life will make a plan for you.
And how did that go in 2020?
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes me sad that married couples would say that because there's no I in team. Like when you choose to get married,
Yeah.
you make a covenant with God. It's supposed to last, and you're supposed to work as a partnership, as a team.
Yeah.
Like it's you and Jesus and your spouse. And I want you to make the time to date each other and to do things like this. Like I know not everybody is wired to be a planner, but you can practice it. And as you practice, you will progress.
Yep. Even if it's just getting together, and we're going to talk about goals here in a second, but getting together and say, hey, we're just going to choose 3 goals for this year.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be massive.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a big elaborate plan. But it's just scheduling the time for you, if you're single, to get kind of aligned with God where He's taken you. If you're married, to get aligned with God and with your spouse on where are we headed this year. You have to set aside time to do it. Because life does get in the way. If we don't happen to life will just happen to us. So I have a recurring reminder scheduled in October of each year for us to schedule our rendezvous. And that's what we did. A couple weeks ago, I said, hey, we need to schedule our time to get away. And that's when we planned our getaway to Denver. So not only when we go to Denver will we get some time to relate to one another while we're away on our trip, which is another R. And not only will we have time to renew our relationship, which is another R. But by scheduling the rendezvous on a date night or especially out of town, we eliminate all the distractions of home, of work, of kids that try to steal away your focus.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's good to at least go out somewhere, even if you just go out in your car.
Yeah.
So that there's no distractions. Those things that pull you away aren't there. Don't let the lack of scheduling it keep you from making a plan. So pause the podcast, set a reminder to schedule your rendezvous. Step 2 is this: review the previous year. Just look back at the previous year. Whenever you sit down by yourself or with your spouse, just review the year. And here's a couple of questions that I think you should ask as you review your year. So I'm giving you guys the tools to do this. You don't have to come up with it on your own. The first one is this: what were the wins? What were the wins this last year? If you actually had goals for the year, which ones did you accomplish? How did you do? Even outside of your goals, what were things that went well? What did you enjoy? What were you thankful for? Like, start with the wins, because that's encouraging.
Yeah.
Don't start with where you sucked last year or how 2020 was just a horrible year. Start with everybody can find one good thing, even in 2020.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so when we go away this next weekend, we're going to do that. We're going to say, okay, we're going to have our goals. What did we do well? What went well? What were we thankful for? As I said, even in the middle of the worst years, you should be able to find some wins. So spend some time rejoicing in the good that happened, not just complaining about the bad. I think praise has a way of getting us above our problems.
Yeah.
Let me say it again. Praise has a way of getting us above our problems. So we just got to praise God for what He's done. So what were the wins? Next question. What do we wish would have been different? Again, if you had goals that you didn't accomplish, talk about why. Was it our fault we didn't accomplish the goals? Did something else get in the way? Did our goals change throughout the year? Like, what happened? What could we have done differently? Were they in our control or out of our control? Like, you talked about the wins, but now talk about the losses too, because those are real.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about we have to grieve some certain things. You might have to grieve some things you didn't accomplish. You might need to repent of some things. Ask God for forgiveness. Ask your spouse for forgiveness.
Forgive yourself.
Forgive yourself. Yeah, that's super good. So how will we move forward from those losses? I think with those two questions, what were the wins and what do we wish would have been different? Like those two questions alone gives you some things to talk about. So last year, when we did our review of our goals, we actually nailed most of our 2019 goals, which was awesome. Some of them we still needed to work on. Some of them became actual lifestyle habits, which is the hope,
Right.
that you're creating new lifestyle habits. And again, the real hope is that you're taking steps that create good habits and good disciplines in your life, your leadership, and your love. So you ask, what were the wins? Do some rejoicing. You ask, what do we wish was different? Like, where did we not do so well? Then based on that, you go to step 3. And this will be our last one for today. Step 3 is this: refocus your priorities. So schedule the rendezvous, review the previous year, then refocus your priorities. Literally, based on your wins and wishes, what do you need to work on? What areas of life rose to the top that you recognize need to change, be improved, cut out, let go of, or whatever? Like, what do we want to accomplish in the new year? This is the step where you just set your goals for the year. And again, don't set such lofty goals that you are setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah.
So, and don't set so many goals that you can't focus on anything, but set some goals for the year. Sabrina and I use a shared note on our phones to do this, and we break down our goals into 4 main categories for us as a couple: financial, relational, family, and then bucket list goals. And we're going to do a whole podcast on a bucket list coming up as well. In our personal life, then, we also have some spiritual, physical, and professional goals. And then I have a life plan that I follow as well, which I will walk through in a podcast. Sabrina, you've not done a life plan, have you?
No, I have not.
Do you have any desire to do one?
Not really.
Okay. Why not?
I don't know.
No.
I don't, maybe I need to listen to your podcast. I've never just sat down and thought about it.
Okay.
I like making goals and meeting those, and I don't want to do too many goals
Yeah.
that it feels overwhelming and then I feel like a failure.
And you do personal goals every year:
Yeah.
spiritual, physical, and professional,
Yeah.
along with our couple ones that we do. So again, to our single friends, if you're doing this on your own or as a single person, I would add spiritual, physical, and professional goals to these ones we're talking about. But for right now, for sake of time, we're only going to focus on the ones that we do as a couple. And then we're going to actually start with those. We're going to walk through our actual 2020 goals on the next podcast that drops on December 28th. We're going to walk through them step by step and talk about every one of our 2020 goals. Don't let that stop you now
Yeah.
from scheduling your rendezvous.
Yeah.
Like, don't wait till the next podcast to schedule it. Schedule the day and time for some time for you and your spouse, you by yourself, after the next podcast, to sit down, to review the previous year, refocus on the new one, and then do the last 2 steps that we'll talk about when that podcast drops. So anything you want to add to that, Sabrina?
No, I think the questions that and we'll probably put those in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put them in the show notes.
But man, if couples just took, number one, if you just took a date night as a couple,
Yeah.
just start there,
Yep.
please. Divorce rate is so incredibly high, and we have to stand together and fight the enemy. But then I feel like Jeff gave you guys a great place to start. That's a lot of questions to discuss and think about and process, and depending on what your year looked like, there may be some grieving.
Yep.
And so I just think that's so good to do. Communication is probably one of the biggest hurdles in why people get divorced. Finances is another one, but we have to talk to each other, and we have to be transparent and raw and honest and share the things we're keeping secret. We have to shine the light into that darkness.
Yep. So schedule the rendezvous, review the previous year, and then refocus your priorities.
Yeah.
And we're going to pick up on the next podcast with that. And we're going to talk about what our 2020 goals were. And then the last 2 steps, which I think are probably the most, outside of actually scheduling it and doing it.
Yeah.
The last 2, I think, are the most important. If you don't do the last two, nothing's going to change. And so we're about to talk about that on the next podcast. And Christmas is going to happen between now and the next episode. So Merry Christmas to everyone. And until then, why don't we end with our marriage mantra? Ready?
Ready.
We are united in Christ, unstoppable with Christ, and unbreakable because of Christ. Now it's time for you to go get naked
and party.
We'll see you on the other side. Thank you for listening to the Naked Party Time podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review on all of your podcast platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure and subscribe as well. For more content, go to jeffmanis.com.